This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, Isotope, Atom Audio, Lewitt, and Spectra 1964. In fact, you're hearing my voice right now on the Lewitt Pure Tube microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX110D mic pre and C610 comp limiter with Isotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron, all recorded safely onto an OWC SSD and mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the link in the show notes below. It's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
But you really have to sell yourself. You have to kind of like tell a story about your life as an artist and like, you know, fine tune it to what you want. So for me, it's always like, you know, I've been playing music my whole life. My grandma was a music teacher, you know, sort of all this emotional content to kind of like catch the readers, the grant readers. You need to draw them in with your story, and then you need to be as specific as possible.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. My studio is proudly powered by OWC, and I love how it's improved my workflow. OWC can connect all your audio work drives, trackballs, mix controllers, MIDI keyboards, audio interfaces, displays, or cameras so that you can work fast and focus on making your best record ever. Go look at the Mini Stack STX, Thunderbay 4, or Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at macsales.com/rockstars to find the perfect solution for your studio from OWC. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound kind of weak or distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding much closer to professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools, and the best part is that these mixing techniques work for you in any DAW, whether you're on Logic, Cubase, Studio One, Reaper, anything you can think of. If you're ready now to make your best record ever, then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Howdy Rockstars, it's your host, Lid Shaw. Welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Colin Scharf, a repeat guest on the podcast. He was on, a few years ago or something like that, and we talked about him discovering the podcast and when he was getting ready to make a record, which was a really cool story to hear. Colin is a songwriter, a producer, a filmmaker, an author, an event organizer, and an occasional actor, and an English professor living in Mankato, Minnesota. He moved from New York to Mankato, and has an indie rock band with his wife called Goodnight Gold Dust. Colin has been on the podcast before, like I said, to talk about his discovery of the show in 2020 and how it helped him make his best record ever at that time to produce his first major album, a holiday compilation featuring musicians from his city performing standard and original songs, which is very cool. So we talked about that, so check that one out. Colin has also produced over a dozen short films and starred as Buddy Holly in the biographical musical Buddy, the Buddy Holly Story in 2016 and 2022. He is the recipient of numerous arts grants, including the 2021 Minnesota State Arts Board Grant, and the author of 2 young adult novels. That's cool. In February of 21, Colin officially opened Gold Mine Studios. Since then, he's produced numerous records, EPs, and singles for local bands, including the Golden Hour live album, which features live recordings of 14 Mankato area artists that performed during Colin's Summer 2022 Golden Hour concert series. Colin has also produced promotional videos for the Mankato chapter of the American Lung Association and Open Arts Minnesota's Action Club Theater. Dun, 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 dun. Colin is also producing the debut albums for his new band, Silver Summer, and his wife, Laura's all-girl band, Given Names. These albums will be released on Precious Metal Records, the DIY label Colin founded to help keep track of his and his friends' musical endeavors. That's a good plan. I've thought about doing that myself. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Oh, this is a quote from Colin here. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what sort of project Colin is involved with. He just wants to create and help others create great art. Quote. So please welcome back Colin Scharf to Recording Studio Rockstars. Colin, are you ready to rock yet again, brother?
I am ready to rock yet again, brother.
Awesomeness. I love that quote. It's how I feel about making records. I just really enjoy the process of working with people and trying to bring out the very best in them and help them do their best work. And I'm inspired to follow their lead and try and make more of my own music as well.
Yeah, it's been really cool to work with a lot of the people in Mankato the past couple of years. Really, since the pandemic is sort of what kickstarted the recording studio side of my like creative output. And
are the people in Mankato as cool as the people in Mankato?
It's sort of like a Shelbyville kind of Springfield kind of thing, you know?
You say Mankato, I say. All right.
That's
Sorry
right.
about that.
It's okay.
Well, very cool, man. So now you just built a new studio there too, your Goldmine Studios. Tell us about that. Was that something that we talked about last time, or is this a sort of a new jam for you?
We talked a little bit about it last time, and I do feel bad. I remember when we started the podcast interview last time, for some reason I didn't hit video, so it was just audio. So I just sat here in the dark, like hearing your voice. It was very familiar because of how I've listened to the podcast a zillion times. But it's really great to actually see you now. You look great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, I'm here in my little Goldmine Studios. This is it's in the basement of a warehouse in the industrial sector of our city. This room specifically was a closet, like was a very big storage closet that was part of another friend's art studio. And we were down here visiting with our friend Melinda, and the landlord of the building was here, and he said, "You guys should." Yeah.
I think they refer to it as a rock-in closet.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a rock-in closet. And the landlord says, you should talk to Melinda about moving into her closet here and turning it into a rehearsal room. This was 2018. And I said, sure, because there were some other bands who were practicing, who were rehearsing in this building as well. Fast forward, long story short, we rehearsed here a lot. I did a lot of treatment on the walls just to kind of make it not so horrible. It was a concrete floor, drywall walls. It was super echoey, which could have been cool for like echo chambers stuff, but rehearsals were like miserable. And then again, the pandemic happened and we couldn't perform. So we just switched to like kind of isolated recording sessions, and it's sort of my main bag right now. I have one other job right now, and it's
still teaching English and stuff?
Actually, this semester I opted to not do that because because I picked up enough gigs at the studio here, and teaching was kind of more and more getting in the way of me being able to like finish records for people and do what I want to do over here. And so I had been teaching for 10 years as an adjunct. So it's not like it wasn't like that exciting, but it was part-time
Did
work.
you go in and say, "Listen, kids, I've taught you everything I know.
Basically.
There's nothing more I could teach you, so here you go. Just remember, wax on, wax off."
That's it, and just keep your head down. Yeah, I mean, I did feel kind of bad with the class I had this past semester. I was really occupied at the studio, and I kind of let them. It doesn't really matter. They all did fine, but it's this year is. I feel like I'm turning a new leaf, so to speak, in that I'm really going all in, as far in as I can go on trying to make music and all of its surrounding parts my thing. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to know that we've been able, here at Recording Studio Rockstars, have been able to be part of that for you.
Instrumental, dude. If it wasn't for your podcast, I mean, you're the only podcast I listen to.
Thanks, man.
I every week it comes up. I'm making breakfast. I do coffee. I put it on. I move the phone around so I can hear it. yeah, it's been really, really great to learn a lot from.
Hopefully the mix is good enough that you can still hear it on the phone, even with the coffee maker going.
It sounds
That's my
great.
goal.
Yeah, it sounds good. It does.
Well, very cool. So tell us a little bit more about the studio that you've set up now. So you're in this giant quote, here's my bad pun, rock-in closet. But it looks huge. I mean, it looks big. Maybe it's also the camera angle. What kind of stuff fits in there? And how much space do you have? And like, how did you decide to sort of arrange your world? It's a one-room space, basically, so you're recording and performing in the same space?
Correct. Yeah. So it's a 16-foot by 24-foot, rectangle, which again, is perfect for rehearing. That's
a hell of a rock-in closet.
Yeah, man, the rock-in is rocking out. That's all we do in here. So it's it's like super great for rehearsing. I mean, I've had when I was getting ready for we talked about the Buddy Holly story. We were doing rehearsals here, and that was drums, bass, guitar, me on vocals, keyboard, horn section. There was 8 or 10 of us in here. So I've definitely had like full, huge rehearsals in this room. And then when it turns to the studio, you're kind of limited to what you can do. I can do like all live stuff in here. I don't like to because I want to try to make it sound as much like a record as I can. At least to where my mind is at right now with what a record sounds like. You just get, bleed through and all this kind of stuff. And, but yeah, the room's super cool. So the way it's organized, my sort of mixing desk is at the one wall. And then as you move back, I'm kind of motioning here, as you move back away from the mix desk, the guitars are set up. I've got a whole wall of keyboards, some cool old keyboards. I've got a Roland Juno 60 is in here. My Wurlitzer is at home. I should bring that over here. And then the drummer sits all the way at the back. And kind of on the walls, when we moved in, and it was a rehearsal studio, I mentioned a second ago that it was drywall walls, concrete floor, echoey as hell.
Yeah.
So I found it's called soundboard. It's like compressed cardboard, and we slammed that up on the walls, and it just deadened it totally. And then my wife and I hung some, curtains around the room to kind of give it a little more of a sort of vibe. I am lately rethinking that move though, simply because of like everybody talks about, big rooms, big open sound, big room tone, and especially on your drums. And my drums are like dead as hell in here, which is cool because then they're not like killing your ears in such a small room. But yeah, I've been thinking more about what else could I do in this room. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess, with all of us, the answer to that is always just try some shit, It's tough sometimes because when you have to move a bunch of things around and change the walls and stuff, it's a lot of effort to try a new thing to see what you think. And I know we always have this accompanying fear that the decision will be wrong that we did just before we did somebody's record,
Yeah,
but inevitably, there's no way around it. We just got to try them all. But I was going to point out two studios that come to mind, looking at your space and thinking about that, and that whole dead room, live room question. Yeah. My Bonnaroo Hay Bale studio was similar to what you've got.
Cool.
Yours probably bigger space than that. Yeah. And we had great luck recording full bands in there. Not every time. Sometimes it didn't work, and sometimes it worked like fantastically well. But we definitely found that the deadness was like good.
Yeah,
and I mean things, isolated in that small space.
Yeah, and I've learned, obviously it's all about mic placement and like technique, and the drummer's got to exactly
space,
yeah. We've like I've multi-tracked, rehearsals and like done some like live band video performances in here. And I'm always really surprised by how it turns out. So I kind of see myself this year moving maybe more toward like, let's do drums and bass and guitar all live. And then we'll track, vocals on top of it. But again, like that kind of decision is between, me and the band, obviously. If that's what the band wants, I always offer it. I've been offering it to them more lately. Like, you guys want to try it live, or do you want to, it's going to sound better if I can do it individually, but, we could also do it live. And they lately have been opting to just, go piece by piece, which makes the sessions a bit longer. But
Yeah,
You know?
it does.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Though doing live band recording speeds things up so much.
Yeah, and I mean, if maybe I can just jump into it. We, as you were reading my intro, I was like, God, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. I was a little sort of like, maybe I shouldn't have written so much, but you mentioned.
Now we know all about you, man.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, live stuff. This past summer, we talked about in my intro. You mentioned the Golden Hour concert series, and that's something that I can dive into right now if you want to hear about it. Yeah.
I do. I wanted to add one more thing. So I was saying there were two studios that came to mind.
Oh, right.
The other one that's worth checking out for you and the Rockstars is Alan Evans over at Iron Wax Studios in Massachusetts, making all those great funk and soul records. And his space might be bigger than that, but it's the same thing. It's all band, control room, all in one room. And I don't think and it was concrete walls when he moved in and stuff. But, and he just put up, select panels. So he didn't go for super dead, but those records that he's making really sound fantastic too. So I think those are both, his records are available online. So anybody who's curious about what kind of sound can you get in a single space, go study those as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
Atom Audio can provide all your monitor needs. Whether you're setting up a first-time home studio for recording music or podcasts, or a world-class full-size studio for professional mixing and mastering in stereo or immersive sound. Featuring the XART tweeter and custom DSP onboard processing, the A-Series monitors will perfectly adapt to your studio. Get the Atom Audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for you with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. All right, so tell us about the live record and mixing it there.
Yeah, man, that was really exciting. So in 2021, okay, so this is a little bit of a story. My good friend and his wife, Dan and Emily, they bought a bar in town called the Wine Cafe. And the Wine Cafe is sort of like the artist kind of rock and roll bar, It's a classy dive bar. And so they took over just before the pandemic, right? So 2019, they took over and then, boom, it was gone. So limped through the pandemic, and then 2021, beginning of that year, Dan comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Colin, I want to book music at the cafe. I want to do big shows. I want to fill the parking lot because it's a big parking lot up behind the place." And I was like, "Okay, sure, let's talk about it." And so I talked to another friend of mine who's, I guess you could call him. He's a good friend, but he's also been a bit of a mentor to me. And he said, "Don't go big, go local." Right, so what he was aiming at, he was like, Colin, we just went through, a full year of no live performances. All these local bands have not touched a stage in, months. Give them an opportunity to, get back on a stage, do a concert series, where it's featuring local artists. So I said, okay, I can do that. Sure. So I talked to the local college radio station here, and we kind of bounced back and forth. They sponsored the event. They put up, sponsorship funds to pay the bands. And out of that, I booked an 8-date, every weekend, July through August, concert series. And what I liked about it is I picked the headliner, and then I had the headliner pick their opener, basically. So it was my sort of handpicked selections, and then the headliners got to bring in someone they wanted to showcase. So it was really, really collaborative. And every weekend, every Saturday, July through August that year, the patio it was an outdoor series too. So we were always on the patio, except for 2 shows because of the weather. One show was over 100 degrees with 1,000% humidity, and we just had to go inside. Another show was raining. So whatever. But so it was a huge success. And then we did it again this past summer. And the stipulation from the radio station, because they sponsored it again, they gave us a little bit more money, and they said, "We want you to record every performance." So luckily, cool. Yeah, it was super rad. And luckily, after 2021 series, my good friend and the drummer of my band Silver Summer, his name's Tyler. He like is such a quick study, and he figured out how to engineer, how to set up everything. So Tyler would, engineer everything. He would get all the stage set up because we had to bring our own PA. We had to do everything, for every show, which was fun, but also kind of a workout. And anyway, and then after that very first show, we listened, to the playback of the multi-tracked everything. I fully mic drum kit, DI bass, mic guitars, whatever. And we were like, my God, this sounds great. It sounds like a record. And the performances were so awesome. And so
there's something I bet you discovered. Maybe it was a surprise to you, but you talked about it being an outdoor show versus an indoor.
Yeah.
Did you notice, and were you aware of it, that the sounds, it almost sounded like everything was recorded in an isolated dead space?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like, oh my God, you can like solo everything, and you hear a little bit of bleed, but you don't. It sounded so much better than I would have imagined. Yeah, it was like it sounds like a record. Yeah,
that's the thing about recording outside, which we rarely get to do, right?
Yeah.
But when we're outside, there are no walls, and there's no room modes, and there's no reflections off things.
Yeah.
That screw with the phase and the sound of everything. So everything that gets picked up by a mic is typically either a direct signal, or it's just that, the sound traveling from the amp across the room to, the drum set or something, depending on that little bit of bleed that you talked about. But it's not bleed that's bouncing off 5 different walls at once.
Yeah, exactly.
How many walls do we have in a room? I guess we only have 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Yeah, there would definitely be, like, there was one recording where I was just chasing the, like, bleed from the bass guitar, the bass amp, like out of all the drum mics, and it was had to kind of like do some work there. But overall, it was really great. And so now I'm still waiting. I just finished the like last mix of it because I got delayed on some stuff. But anyway, I'm hoping that by the spring, my plan is to have the compilation released. Got to do some fundraising I'd love to put out an actual CD, so you can kind of sell it in town here. Maybe use it as a fundraiser kind of thing for next year or something. But yeah, and when you kind of like step back and listen to it as a whole, it's like, my God, these are all local groups with their and it's all original music too. It's 14 bands playing, all original stuff. This is a town of like 50,000 people. This is a small city, I mean, we're like a sort of self-sustaining kind of river city in the upper Midwest, but to just kind of step back and look at the talent that's just in this little river valley here, it's overwhelming. Yeah. And
it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you notice when you recorded and mixed the drums that you sort of missed the sound of a room, though, around the drums? Did you find, because that's one of the things that's interesting to me, is the room for a drum kit, it sort of gives it the power. It's almost like, playing a saxophone without the body of the saxophone or something, it could be like, it needs that tone of a room space sometimes, just depending on the music and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually my favorite drum performance from the concert series was when we had to do a show indoors, and one of the bands, they're called Lodi, and they're sort of like Sabbath, like doom metal. It's nice. Sludgy and high tenor vocals and just these deep guitars, 3-piece drum bass guitar, kind of stuff like that. And man, those drums sounded so rad in that and inside the bar. But yeah, when taking the live recording from outdoors, because we only had 16 channels and a lot of times they were all full up. And so we just kind of did kick snare, and then I had a pair of condensers as drum overheads. But you were kind of, we started to miss like rack tom tones or tom tones, right? You didn't quite have that body there. It was a lot of kick snare forward and yeah. But,
everything is the close mic. And then if you want it to have excitement around it, you sort of have to manufacture that. Mm-hmm, There's no sustain on a snare drum hit like there is in a room,
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, that wong, kind of sound. And, then you get to like parallel compression and like drum crush tracks and kind of stuff like that. You can kind of, like you said, like bring out that excitement. And
did you set up room mics and audience mics or any of that kind of stuff when you did the recording?
When we remembered to, it was.
Weren't you paying attention to Recording Studio Rock Stars? Come on now.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't say when we remembered to. One of the bands, just for example, was like, I think an 8-piece group, maybe 9 keys, violin, guitars, 2 guitars, drums, bass, and the keyboard player had like a double stack too, so we needed to burn 2 lines there. So sometimes we just didn't have the line for it, and we kind of, whenever we would forget, like, oh shoot, we didn't set up the crowd mic, we would just go, oh, we'll just like sample some claps and fade it in, sort of, in between the stuff. Yeah, man, I'm just kind of reflecting back on that concert series. I just met with one of the people that works at the bar, and she was like, "Are we doing it again this year?" And I said, "If you want to, yeah." So it was like really, really magical.
Here's my ninja tip, rock stars. If you run out of inputs, don't forget that you could probably just take somebody's spare iPhone or 2 and just put on the voice memo app and just roll it in the room somewhere. I bet that would probably work for a hand clap mic,
Yeah,
an audience mic in between.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like
just
that.
As long as nobody steals your phone during the show.
Yeah. And then you're out there mixing with an iPad. You're kind of like walking through the crowd, and I set the iPad down, and I'm like, where the hell did the iPad go? Kind of stuff.
So you're mixing front of house and recording the band, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we would have, I had my laptop on stage, and the mixer that I use is a Behringer XR18 with, it's a 16 channel, 16 XLR inputs, and then a stereo, in and out or whatever. USB into the laptop. And what's cool is that you're recording just the gain, right? So none of the processing, none of the EQ, none of the compression gets printed. It's all, just the mic gain level. So you can have a fully mixable record, recording rather, out of that. And then,
does it also record the stereo mix from the show? So you have that as a reference or anything?
No, I mean, you could probably set it up to do that. But I just go however many channels there were, 16 channels, hit record, they all scroll across the screen, and then mess with it later. Yeah, and then I would, run out, mix front of house, and kind of do, we got to put some compression here and do this kind of stuff. I don't love mixing live as much as I thought I was going to. I've kind of like grown a little tired of it.
I know the feeling.
It's a lot.
For me, the challenge is, the biggest challenge is the fact that it's just really loud and usually doesn't sound very good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the control of a control room situation. But the positive was, I love the fun of mixing live, where you're like messing with stuff in real time, and you feel, doing effects and whatever.
Yeah. There was one show where I gave the iPad to Tyler, and he was mixing, and he suddenly there was just this like insane amount of delay, woof, 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 kind of screaming out the speakers, and I look over and his eyes are huge, and he's like wiping away at the tablet. He's like, oh my God, what did I do?
I touched the wrong end of the iPad.
Yeah.
It was upside down.
Yeah. Yeah. Mixing on an iPad is I don't know. It's a thing. It's fine. But you do kind of start to go like, man, I wish I had some knobs to like, reach at and stuff.
So remind us what kind of apps you like to record into and mix in your studio. Are you using Pro Tools or something else?
I've been in Logic for 10 years.
Cool.
Yeah. I've been in Logic for 10 years. I guess I was in Pro Tools for a second, in like the early teens. I was borrowing a friend's like Pro Tools rig with his iLock and all this stuff.
Who cares? Let's talk about Logic. I want to hear about Logic.
Oh, sure. Yeah, cool. Yeah, what do you want to know?
I don't know. What's some of your favorite stuff about it? I mean, I often think of it as a really good choice for somebody who wants to write and compose music, because it's just everything's at your fingertips for that.
That's that's where I was going to go with it. Yeah. Logic for me came out of GarageBand, obviously. So, I got my first Mac, and then I was using GarageBand. I had been using some N-Track Studio was what I was using in like undergrad, was like a thing that I found. And then, GarageBand, you figure that out, then Logic, next step up. Logic is super cool for, you can pull up a MIDI instrument, you can pull in loops, you can just very, very quickly get like sketches out. And then, just to my right here is my like preamp kind of console setting, so then obviously you can record into Logic as well. But I do really like the like quickness of getting sounds going. Yeah.
Do you get pretty deep into editing and things like that too?
I will say that I have kind of gone a little nutty with like drum editing lately. Last year found me like actually going in and I know Beat Detective exists in Pro Tools, and I know that there are a lot of ideas about leave the drums as is, or go hard and make them tight. And for the records that I've done last year and that I'm working on now, I will go in and I will sort of manually line up the drums and kind of tighten them up. I've gotten quicker.
But how do you do that? Is it do you slice and dice the audio bits, or do you actually use like what do they call it, flex time or something in Logic?
Yeah, Logic has flex time, and I keep meaning to. The handful of tutorials that I've watched on it have yielded mixed results on my end, and I'm sure it's something I'm doing wrong. And so I just figured out, you group the drums, find the transient, and I'll kind of work in like what I really like about where I'm at now as a drummer. And actually on the episode I was listening to this morning with Will Pugh was the guest. Yeah. He was talking about drummers, like, what was he saying? He referenced Ringo Starr, and he said, like for a while it was just drums were just a boom check, just simple backbeat kind of stuff. And then he was kind of talking about like more complex patterns, more complex drummers. He was talking about double kick kind of stuff and just how it can really kind of throw off your ability to edit the drums. And so with the drummers that I've been working with lately, we kind of shape the parts to be a little more straightforward, right? Because it's not about the drum, how many drums can you hit at the same time? It's about the song. And so out of that comes my ability to kind of like section out the drums. This is the verse pattern. This is the pre-chorus pattern. This is the chorus pattern, whatever. And then I can sort of like take an 8-bar, maybe even like a 1 measure. Sometimes you get lucky. You get that 1 measure pattern, tighten that up, and then just boop, 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 loop it across. But then you got to go like, the cymbal bleeds through for about 4 measures. So then you got to cut that whole thing together. And then when the cymbal's out, okay, good, cymbal's gone. Now I can just loop it from here with just the one, dry pattern.
Yeah, if they played it well on that 1 bar.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's an adventure, and
it is. There's so much to learn doing that stuff. I've done so much of it.
Yeah, what do you do?
All these discoveries. Yeah. I do all kinds of things. I do whatever's needed, but more often than not, I default these days to not doing anything to the drums. But I'm working on my own EP right now. Yeah. And let me think. One of the songs I completely chopped up and put everything exactly on the grid.
Sure. It sounds cool when you get it like that. Like I'm like, oh my God, this sounds like a record. You keep saying that phrase, but like, and then,
songs sound great when they're built off a really solid drum foundation.
Yeah.
And if it's the kind of song where it's appropriate for them to be very on the beat, then that's great. But if it's the kind of song where it's appropriate for them to move around a little bit, then that can be great too. It's just
totally.
That's where it's like, as a producer or engineer, it's like we have to just learn to trust our own musical intuition.
Yeah.
And it's tricky though, isn't it? Sometimes do you ever find that you just don't know what you think in the moment, or you think you do, and then later you come back and listen and you're like, how did I not catch that?
Yeah, I will admit to, yes, I have that. That I am working on a 4-song EP for this really, really cool local band right now. They're called the Sons of Bliss, which is sweet because when it's the acronym, it's SOBs. So like that's kind of their thing.
Right.
It's sort of like, it reminds me so much of like I'm getting a lot of like second album Bush vibes out of them, like the one they did with Albini, Razor Blade Suitcase, and then like heavy sort of rock, like Chevelle and kind of stuff like that, which I don't really know that much about, but my reference is coming from like sort of like alternative grunge, that era, that 90s stuff. So they came into the studio, middle of the fall of this past year. So like September, October. We were going to get drums. We had incredible drum tones going. Just the sounds in the room were so good. And then trying to track to a click, and the poor drummer was like just all over the place. And I was like, you know what, guys? let's just do scratch guitar, scratch vocals, okay, to the click. And the singer guitarist was pretty good about that. He was super tight. And these kids are in their like early 20s, so I feel a little bit like I'm kind of taking them under my wing in a way, which is, I always tell them, guys, nobody was there for me. Nobody was there. 20 years older than, or how old am I? 37. So however old I am to them, nobody was there for me, when I was your age.
Nobody was there for me.
That's right. It was just me and my wits, And so anyway, so they took the tracks home, they got the BPMs, and the drummer came back, and that kid was a fucking monster when he came back in. He practiced so much, and he came in. Oh,
cool.
Yeah, and I was like, Ben, what did you do? He said, I just practiced all the time to the click, and it was incredible. It just knocked him out. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to touch these drums. And then I'm mixing now, and I'm like, you probably could tighten up that kick pattern there, because it's a lot of double kick, kind of stuff. And so you kind of, the more you listen to it, the more you start to hear like, yeah, you could probably tighten this up. But overall, I was so like pleased with his effort and his just drive to get his, to be better. And I thought that was super cool.
Howdy, rock stars. I've got a secret to tell you about how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars. My secret is using iZotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron on every single episode. Right now, you are hearing RX breath control, declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, ozone multiband compression, neutron EQ, and limiting, all from iZotope. Go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off. Yeah, I remember when I was in college, we had a drummer in our fusion band, and
cool.
He loved doing. Well, we were kind of a weirdo funk band too. And he loved doing really fancy drum parts, but they were always a little bit like sloppy and messy. And
Sure.
then there was this other band that was kind of like a Mr. Bungle kind of thing.
Okay, weird, cool.
And called Loppy Bo Jaime. And he went off and played with them. He joined them after our band was done. And he disappeared for a long time. And then
Sure.
we saw them play a show, and we were like, holy shit, man, what happened to you? You sound incredible. And it was the same kind of story. Like that band had just, of course, the story that went with it, the urban legend of it was that, they just like locked him in the basement. They were like, made him play drums to a click for 8 hours straight every day. But it works. He just came out and he was just solid as hell. And I've never heard him play like that. And it's cool to see that. And especially, when you're in your 20s and you're still, you're just so capable physically and mentally, and you can learn. I mean, I'm relearning guitar now in my 50s, and I'm pretty proud of myself. But if I had played this much when I was in my 20s, I'd probably be like blazing all over the place,
Yeah. Just melting every face that walked by, right? Yeah.
Now I play and I'm like, oh, my arm hurts.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, wow, my wrists are not what they used to be. This is the whole carpal tunnel thing. But yeah, and I'll just to close up with that band. The other thing I like about them is that I have my rates, and they're like, no problem. Cash comes in. There's no haggling. There's none of this stuff. It's like, holy cats, this is like, you guys are awesome.
Cash in paper bags.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah. They met me at the coffee shop a couple of weeks ago, and they just forked over an envelope, and my buddies were there. They were like, did you just get a ton of money from those kids?
Why are these all crumpled ones, Scott?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, well, cool, man. Well, so then, so when you're chopping stuff up in Logic too, I love geeking out on,
let's go.
Stuff that you learn and using a DAW like that.
Yeah.
You just do you use like quantize features after you slice and dice things, or do you just move them around by hand, a little here, a little there, and just crossfade it back together?
That's exactly it. Yeah. And I kind of ran okay. A good friend of mine worked in the studios in Minneapolis for a few years, and then he kind of became a computer code writer guy, and he's not out of doing music, but he's kind of not doing music, doing recording
so now,
stuff. Yeah.
Now you just talk. He just calls you from his yacht every once in a while.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, he's out in San Francisco, if you're listening, what's up, Zach? I'm sure he'll listen. Zach's awesome. And I learned so much from him, from his experience in the studios. And I said, like, dude, how do I get drums to sound like, sound like studio drums in terms of like timing? And he said, well, we can use Beat Detective. And I had a Pro Tools setup at that time, and I was paying for the subscription. And so I used Beat Detective and then would import back to Logic. Because for me, man, at this point, I was trying to relearn Pro Tools, and it honest to God just felt like I've been to Puerto Rico a few times, and I speak enough Spanish to like get by, but boy, your head starts to hurt at the end of the day. Like I don't want to have to speak Spanish today. That's how I kind of felt with trying to learn Pro Tools after being really versed in Logic and still learning stuff about Logic, but it just felt like I was mixing with one hand behind my back in Pro Tools. So I was like, screw this. I'm just going back to Logic and whatever. I'll just do that. So that to say, I chop transient at the kick, chop at the snare, chop at whatever else fills a measure. Crossfade, pull it back, this and that, pull the fades in, listen. Do you hear bzz, bzz, every so often? Okay, what's that?
And that would be, what's that sound?
It's like a transient getting cut off without a crossfade, and then it's like there's a hit that isn't faded out, or there's a hit that's like sort of, shouldn't be there, and you just have to kind of manipulate that out.
And then you were also pointing out the discovery. You become very intimate with the sound of the cymbals and when they were hit in a groove.
Yeah.
When you start editing and looping things, and you're like, oh, what's that weird? The cymbals coming in on that snare drum that I snuck in there and looped.
Yep.
So, some takeaways there is if you could actually, if you can actually get the drummer to kind of blow off the crashes a lot, that can help a little bit.
Yeah.
You can try and pace it back in, but usually it's just a lot of hard work looking for like the perfect 4 bars from when the crash cymbal happened and the perfect 4 bars that happen after that when there's no cymbals. Yeah.
Yeah. It's time consuming, but it's kind of meditative in a way. In our basement at home, we have a projector, and I'll just blow up Logic on the projector, say goodnight to my wife. I'll go down there and just with headphones, just kind of cut drums together, and 2 hours go by, and it's like I've got 2 songs cut. So we can get to work, tracking stuff the next day. And, it might, I do go back and forth on it. I go back and forth and say, is this too much? Is this overkill? Right. And I don't know. It's hard to know sometimes.
It
is. Yeah.
Well, one thing I've learned about editing drums is when you edit the drums, you have to play everything to those edited drums afterwards.
Yes. Yep.
I've still never not very successfully, gone and taken the bass and the guitars that were played to the live drums and edit them to be tight with the new tight drums. It never seems to work for me. Yeah. Now, I know that sometimes people will take a DI of the guitar and then they can, it gives you a little more of an edit point to use.
Sure.
But the bass probably had a DI and it still didn't help much.
Yeah.
So I always find it can help a lot to like edit the drums, get them to where you're like, these are really great. They're really solid. Like if I was an EDM DJ, I'd be happy with these right now, And then start recording to those, and it really helps.
Yeah. And that's what I've been doing for the past couple of records that I've done I didn't do it for the Sons of Bliss. Although there is one section at the end of one of their songs where it's this like sludgy, super duper double kick pattern thing. And I was like, this needs to be as tight as hell. So I went in and did that. But I like what you said because it makes me feel better. You said like, it's hard to know sometimes. Am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? My sort of thought process on that is like, I want people to hear the stuff that I'm recording for them, and to share it with their friends and their family and whoever, right? And for people to go, you recorded that in a basement, in Mankato, Minnesota. I mean, I'm not like, I don't want to be some sort of, I don't have visions of like being some great producer who's going to move to a city and have a huge SSL desk and all this stuff. But for what I'm doing right now, I want it to sound as good as it can,
Get a small SSL desk.
The thought is like...
Actually, that's what I just did. I just got the big 6 in my studio. And I've only done like one test run on it so far, but it was awesome.
Cool.
I mean, by the time this comes out, I'll have used it a bunch, but
Yeah.
because I do these usually in advance. But no, it's cool. And it's cool to have that combination of stuff. But I think Logic is great. I mean, when I've played around with it, it's awesome. What you described about Pro Tools is the same in reverse for me in Logic. So when I go over there, I'm like, oh my God, how do I do this basic thing? I don't even know how to copy something and scoot it over and shuffle something around or edit, But for creating, it's really fun. And for working, for me, I find the best way to explore new territory is to just sit down and do a song demoing process where I'm just like doing quickly. And I'm like, I don't care if it's perfect. It's not for somebody else that's paying me money. If it's fucked up, it's just me and my thing. And then that's how I've sort of stumbled my way around Studio One until I got familiar or work in Logic and get familiar. Same thing with Ableton Live.
Sure. Ableton is one where I just was like, I don't have any desire to learn this.
That's one actually, if I was going to pick one and say, everybody should know how to use this one, it might be Ableton, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's especially with Pro Tools. Pro Tools I think of as like the place for organic instruments. And Ableton is like the ultimate place for electronic instruments.
Yeah. I mentioned in my friend Zach, he was super into Ableton and he was like doing, like live looping stuff. And another friend of mine who's out in Maine, he uses Ableton in his like live setup too. And he's doing triggering, what do you call it in Ableton? There's a Clips. That's it. Yeah. It's like film. No,
that's what you call them in Pro Tools now too.
Oh my God. Oh no. I'm so behind the times. I opened it up and I was trying to figure out like how to use it as a live looper, like that side of Ableton. And there's a part in my mind where things just like do not enter. And a lot of it is like technical side of things. Like I feel like if it's a creative side, like how does the emotion of this song, how do we channel it? How do we capture it? All of that, like the arty sort of side of things. I feel confident, in my ability to like work there. But then it gets to like, you have to maybe open a manual for something. I go, oh God, oh no. And I kind of like black out for a minute. I've been getting better at forcing myself to learn those sorts of things. But I just think back to Ableton and you brought it up and I'm like, I don't have any.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also remember having some struggles when I first tried to use it. And then one night I was hanging out with a buddy of mine and I was a little drunk and he was just like, make it do this. And for some reason I like effortlessly was figuring it out. And I was like,
sure.
That was
weird. Yeah. There you go.
And
That's
it's
cool.
the language thing you talked about. I remember also when I was, young and I was traveling in France, I was like, I sometimes spoke better French if I was out drinking with people at a bar.
My Spanish is like, bada bing, man, let's go. When we're having a couple of whatever. Yeah, we were down there. So I feel that.
OWC is your one-stop shop for flexible drive storage and connectivity solutions for your studio. The Mini Stack STX for your Mac Mini adds 2 additional drives over a universal SATA HDD SSD bay and an NVMe M.2 PCIe SSD, plus 3 additional Thunderbolt USB-C ports. The OWC Thunder Bay 4 chassis, built like a tank, gives you 4 hot-swappable 2.5-inch RAID configurable drive bays, plus an extra Thunderbolt 3 jack for daisy chaining up to 5 devices. Or check out the OWC Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock with 2 RAID configurable drives and 7 ports of connectivity, including a front-side SD card reader, 1 gig Ethernet, 2 USB 3.2 ports, a dedicated display port, and an additional backward-compatible Thunderbolt port. Get your studio connected with the Mini Stack STX, Thunder Bay 4, and Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at macsales.com/rockstars. Use the custom link in our show notes because it's a great way for you to help support this podcast. So thanks, Rockstars. Howdy, Rockstars. We're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Colin Scharf, joining us again from Mankato, Minnesota.
Yeah,
Say it right, Rockstars. And are you ready to jam, dude?
I am very ready to jam.
Okay. One of the things that you do remarkably well is you organize things and you make things happen, making records with local artists, bringing in lots of local artists into a studio, doing the shows like that. There's videos of you playing like weirdo ambient electronic music on guitar with this guy playing synth, at art openings and stuff like that. And then, lots of stuff. So I think of you as very open-minded on the creative aspect, which I think you're pointing out too. And I remember you mentioning too that you had gotten and you'd actually secured art grants to do some of the records you're doing or the projects. I think you have some stuff coming up. So tell us about that. And if so, tell us what does it mean to get an art grant?
Sure. So Minnesota is unique in that we have written into our like tax stuff a percentage of your the tax money goes toward the arts in this state, which is super cool. So out of that comes annual arts grants, and so I've received, I think, 8 now at this point. I just won my second Minnesota State Arts Board grant, and it's a $10,000 grant.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big, right? So that's another reason why I'm kind of like taking this year to just do music. And so with that money, I wrote into the grant that I'm going to use it to finish recording my new band's record. My new band is called Silver Summer, and put out the record. I have written into the grant that it's going to be a vinyl release, which I really hope that the timing kind of works out with it, because I know vinyl takes a while.
It does. 8 months.
Yeah,
that's my tip.
That's what I've heard. Yep. So I'm super excited about that, and getting an arts grant. Really. I mean, 10 grand's going to go quick. I'm looking at microphones. I'm looking at stuff like that. I'm paying rent. I'm maybe going to buy a small PA, some stuff for my live PA. So it's I'm not just like going to live on that. But
so let me ask you more about that. And I have I think my cousin's daughter is doing sort of a grant sort of thing for songwriting as well.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, I think that's so fascinating. It's such a cool thing. It really brings back this whole process of making records and music much more into the realm of art, fine art, which the idea of grants and stuff I've first become familiar with in the context of, fine artists and what, making things like that. So what do the rock stars need to know about it? Like, A, what is a grant? B, what kind of places in the world could they look for something like that? But the dog next door, Doobie. Doobie's barking. Doobie's on the podcast again. Hi, Doobie. So, well, at least, it's like the Doobie brothers.
That's right, man. Doobie. He's cool.
Yeah. So, so what does it mean to write a grant proposal? Because I know I always think of that as a big deal.
It is. Yeah. It's time consuming. I would say I have 2 degrees in English. So like writing isn't that far out for me. But you really have to sell yourself. You have to kind of like tell a story about your life as an artist and like, fine tune it to what you want. So for me, it's always like, I've been playing music my whole life. My grandma was a music teacher, sort of all this emotional content to kind of like catch the readers, the grant readers. You need to draw them in with your story, and then you need to be as specific as possible with your ask. I'm going to use these funds to do X, Y, and Z, right? And typically it's a year span of time. You get the money. I think the money will be dispersed in March of this year. So by next March, I will have to have done something to show, right, with the money. Yeah. And it's more often than not. I know that there are some grants that have like a matching fund kind of thing, but these ones that I've received have been, here's just the lump sum and rock and roll.
So matching fund, I'm going to have to slow you down for some of this because this is second nature to you, but for us, it's brand new. So matching fund means if I put 5,000 in, the grant would put 5,000 in or something like that.
Yeah.
Or if I raise money locally, they'll match it.
Yeah.
And then when you say the readers of the grant proposal, what might that look like in a lot of situations? Is that, I imagine there's one person who's like, yep, you're okay, but it might be like a whole board of people, or it might be like 50 people that have to read it, or like, how does stuff like that work?
Yep. And typically you can actually either attend you can attend the meetings either over Zoom or in person. I've never done that. I do not want to hear what somebody has to say about my stuff, and I've, again, been lucky. So I've gotten every grant that I've applied for. So I feel like I'm lucky, but I don't want to sit there and hear somebody go, "Who's this Yahoo think he is?"
You are anyway, a rock star, man.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, what I love about it, there's money out there for the arts, and like, you can find it. So if you're wherever you're listening from, I mean, just Google. If you're like, I grew up in New York State. I'm in Minnesota, so I just Google, if you're in New York State arts grants, Minnesota arts grants. Just Google that phrase. You'll probably find something. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Well, I'm going to keep hitting you with questions right now. So
let's go.
Arts grant implies all sorts of art. So am I competing with Picasso for this money if I wanted an arts grant to make a record? And what tips do you have for the rock stars about, what makes you stand out with asking for money to make a record? I mean, can we just go say, I love writing songs about my ex-girlfriends and I really just want to make a record, or something like that?
You have to. I feel like my pitch for the State Arts Board grant. I got pretty vulnerable with it, I guess, and not as like I was. I wasn't making up anything, right? It was all honest, but it was the first time that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just go for it. And a lot of the lyrical content in my new band that I write the songs and all the lyrics for my new group Silver Summer, and a lot of the lyrics are about people I've known, about things I've done, experienced, and experiences of my friends' stuff. A lot of dark, a lot of moody, a lot of like kind of edgy in a we're all still alive, thankfully, kind of way. But, so using that band as a way to kind of process and explore some of those themes. And then just in the grant, I was honest about it. Like this band sings about, gender identity. We sing about addiction. We sing about, all these really sort of heavy things that you kind of get shushed about. And I pitched that what I'll do is not just play shows, not just put out the record, but also do songwriting like workshops where I'll kind of like break down how I have written these lyrics and what these songs are about, and kind of coach people on how to, coach. I don't want to use that word, but just sort of like have kind of like a craft talk on my songwriting process. And for me, I think that combination of elements, it the sort of emotional side of that, and then the educational side of it is what worked in my favor.
Yeah. So do you feel like most art grants that get approved sort of have to be about the populace, the people, as opposed to just benefiting the artist for making the art? I mean, do we have to make politically correct records to get an art grant?
Yeah, I don't know about that so much, but I think what it seems like the grantors like is an educational aspect. How does your art how can your art, whatever it is, give back to your community or your state, in this case. And so it's almost like if you were a sculptor and you wanted to put a giant sculpture in the town square, they'd want to approve something that was somehow benefited everybody. So, because they don't want a giant sculpture that doesn't that people don't really like or something. Exactly. Yeah. It's helpful to, if you're listening and if you're thinking about this and this is sparking anything for you, like it's helpful to think about, what can I do that can not just benefit myself, but also benefit others. And, we all like, yeah, man, my song's about whatever. Oh, they're going to be great. But like, you just got to crank it up just a little bit if you're going to shoot for a grant.
Yeah. That goes hand in hand with songwriting too. So, a common advice for songwriting, if you want songs to be popular songs, is you're going to have to connect with a larger body of people. You're going to have to either the lyric needs to be either overtly or abstractly.
Yeah.
About something that resonates with everybody in some way.
Yeah, one of the things that I one phrase, one like sort of mantra or whatever, and that I got from writing school, from going to school to get my master's in creative writing, was find the universal in the specific.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So be as specific as you can, and you will sort of speak to more people. Of course, you got to finesse it, and you got to sort of have something. I don't know, man. Yeah.
Can I shorten that to find the universe in the spec?
You can. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And I don't remember if we talked much about songwriting stuff last time. We might have. We probably did. But I love thinking about songwriting, lyrics, and all that. Probably because I feel like I suck at it, and it's so challenging for me. It's like the last place I go.
I know.
But the idea of stuff I've learned, to think about like songwriting in terms of descriptive, which is a creative writing tool. I think being descriptive.
Yeah.
Hitting five senses when I think about writing something.
Yeah.
Being abstract in terms of metaphor and simile. Don't say, the dog is barking.
Yeah.
Say,
Yeah.
The neighbor's clouds are rumbling. I don't know, whatever, something like that.
Yeah, right. That's great. That's
the
a good
earth
song.
shakes.
Yeah.
But one of the takeaways from that, like why? So a good question is why do that? And one of the things that really struck me was this idea that when you write and create descriptively, you're actually saying something that is familiar, like the ground is shaking. I don't know. It might be familiar to somebody. The idea of an earthquake or something like that, and then people just they know what that kind of means, and then the listener takes that and conjures up an image around it in their head.
Yeah.
Or like, black skies or whatever, everybody's got their version of what that means. And then it allows the listener to own the meaning of the lyric and the artwork.
Yeah. And that's maybe where I struggle as a lyricist is I come from what I love about song lyrics, and my wife Laura is like such a great lyricist because she just writes these like beautiful passages, and they're so like impressionistic. They're just so like airy and flowy, and just like I don't know. I'm like not doing a great job describing her writing, but then on my side, I'm like, I have to find the narrative. I have to tell the story. And I really don't like story songs, like murder ballads and things like that. Like it's not my bag, but I do find myself getting locked into being too specific. And so then kind of what you were just getting at is sort of, you got to get there, but then how do you make it so that we can all we can interpret it in our own way, or, kind of get guided toward an interpretation. Because ultimately, like if you can't see yourself in the art, whatever it is, you don't see yourself, and it's sort of you're blocked out in some way. Yeah. I find for me sometimes the trick that helps is to, seems like a no-brainer, which is stop self-criticizing so much. So for example, maybe I say a line and I feel like I can read a meaning into it. It feels metaphorical to me in some respect, but then it's very easy to like immediately self-censor that line and go like, oh, that's stupid. That's not good enough.
That's not good enough. Nobody else is going to, and then to pause and go like, you know what? Let's just try it. Let's put it out there. And a great trick is let's double it. Let's double it immediately, because all of a sudden it feels a whole lot more important once it's doubled.
I like that. That's a great
the melody is more solid. The lyric is more solid. The the unstoppable force of it is more unstoppable.
Do you mean double the vocal, like add a vocal double, or like just say the line twice?
Doubling, saying the line twice helps, and then actually an added vocal double
and added
helps.
Yeah,
because sometimes one of the things that I've done a lot with my music buddies and bandmates is we do this thing called poetry scores, where somebody spits out a poem or offers up a poem, and then somebody else says, I'll take it and use that and write a song around it.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. I mean, like, and then sometimes I listen back later, I'm like, I don't really know where this one's going. And sometimes I listen, I'm like, guys, this is brilliant, Yeah. But the first bit I found was like, it was easy for me to come up with a musical idea, and I would come up with a chord progression first, and then rather than second guess that, I just go, it's cool, let's do it, let's go for it. And then I'll maybe put one other overdub on that chord progression, and all of a sudden it becomes more intentional. It's more reinforced. And then I'll go and look at the poem, and I'll sing a first pass over it, just selecting, well, maybe I'll use this line here and this line here. I won't do the poem literally.
Right.
I try and look for the lyrical, phrases in it. And then I find it would be very easy to listen to that first pass and go, oh, that sucked. Oh, I didn't sing it well. The melody's no good. And what I learned to do was to say, you know what? I'm going to trust that very first instinct of where I thought the melody belonged.
Yeah.
Even with it totally screwed up. And if I re-record it, but keep that first melody, don't change it. Don't try 10 more melodies, and look for something that's better. Then double it. It's amazing. It's like all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is like, I never would have come up with this idea like this otherwise.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that I got hung up on all through grad school is I would sit there and maybe I mentioned this when we talked last time. I don't remember. I talk about this a lot where, rather than like, my fault is that I would try and perfect one thing. And what I should have been doing and should be doing is just, okay, that's done. Make a new one, keep going, go. And I'm trying to get myself, I've gotten way better just as a songwriter and even in the studio too, recording other people. Like, don't fuss over it. Just get to the next song, get to the next track. And I've been able to, help out artists that I'm working with. Just say, you know what, you're going to get it as good as you can get it. The vocal's going to be as good as it's going to be on this track. You're going to write another song. You're going to sing another song, and we're going to keep moving. Yeah, you can't.
Well, so to take that another step further too is, the getting it perfect one would be, I'm not even going to put this song away because I think I need to keep working on this song in this voice memo state, until it's perfect or something. But what I found is it doesn't matter. All you need is a sketch of an idea. Yeah. And then the next thing for me would be either the fast demo like I just described, or it would be to take that sketch, chart it out, and then hit it in the studio with the band. And then even at that point, it's like I can feel like, how do I get this version of this band performance to be perfect? And I haven't quite done this yet, but I think the next step from there could even be to go, you know what? What if I just called this version of it a demo and we just recorded it again in a whole new studio setting with a band with what we know now? Maybe, those are quick ways to do things that don't ever get precious at each step along the way.
I think that's the thing that I've been working to get away from is being precious about everything. And I know my record label is Precious Metals Records, but that's only because we're Goodnight Gold Dust and Silver Summer. So I thought Precious Metals was kind of cute.
I can't wait till you start Bitcoin beats.
God. I don't want to get into that. No, thank you. But yeah, man, it definitely leaks into the studio with folks that I've worked with where, some people will just take it and they're like, okay, I'm done. And I'm like, well, maybe we could do another couple of passes. And then you sort of, from my role sitting here in my room, I know how far I can let a person go. You know what I mean? And then other folks will themselves be, do it again. Let's do it again. And then I have to sort of step in and on the other side of it and say, it was good. You're fine. It's such a head game that you kind of play with yourself, getting to what you can sign off on in terms of your song or in terms of your recording. And I guess my only thought is just to keep doing it.
Atom Audio introduces the all-new A-Series line of monitors, featuring the XART accelerated ribbon tweeter design, built-in DSP-based room correction, and speaker voicings, allowing you to customize your Atom Audio monitors to your control room. The A-Series will rock in any studio. Small studio spaces or immersive multi-speaker configurations are perfect for the A4V or the new A7V, the next generation generation of the incredibly popular A7X. Mid-sized rooms and narrow spaces will love the low-profile A44H, expanding on the A7V sound, or the A77H, a true three-way midfield monitor delivering rich, spacious sound. And bigger studios will love the A8H, a three-way speaker and the pinnacle of the A-series that delivers extremely accurate sound required for critical listening environments. Get the Atom Audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for your studio with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. So that brings to mind a little anecdote for the concept of like what's overproducing, what's too much in the studio. So this comes from one of the things. So I'll just put this in context. One of the cool things you did was star as Buddy in Buddy Holly and the Buddy Holly story.
That's right.
And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, cool. And I just typed that into Google and like up popped a video. I started watching it. And then a little later, I was like, oh shit, this isn't the one that Colin said, but it didn't really matter. I think it's the same story.
Yeah.
And there's this scene where Buddy Holly goes into the studio in Nashville and he's like, they record it and he's like, well, that's it. And he's like, all right, come on in. And he's like, well, wait a minute. What, that's it? He's like, yeah, that was good enough. And he's like, well, can you play it back for me, please? And the engineer's like, what's the problem? He's like, can you just play us the song, please? Yeah. And he starts listening and then he stops the engineer and is like, what's the problem down there? And he's like, listen, sir, I've followed all your advice. You told us to play in tune. You told me how to play guitar. You told me how to sing every note and everything. And frankly, this is the most god-awful piece of shit I've ever heard.
Yep, that's the line.
That's so great, Yeah. So, have you ever felt like Buddy in the studio yourself? Or have you ever felt like the Nashville engineer?
Boy, that is an interesting question. I definitely related a lot to Buddy Holly's kind of like story and his whole very brief, career. Everybody wanted him to play country music. He wanted to play rock and roll. And it was kind of the same for me. I grew up in a small kind of rural town. Why don't you play some country music? And I was like, I want to play punk rock. Are you out of your mind? Like country music? No, thanks. Even though I love Garth Brooks, but I wanted to play like, Rancid, Clash. I wanted to get into that stuff. And so I was always kind of like trying to find, be able to do it how I wanted to do it. And really, honestly, finally with Silver Summer, I'm like, my God, this is the band that I've wanted for a long time. We're all, I don't know. It's a really fun band. So
don't leave the Brits out. Aren't you also into like the English beat and the specials? I felt like I saw some of that in the artwork.
Clash for sure. I've got my Clash shirt on right now. Sort of my good luck shirt. Yeah, I mean, I have a big like punk rock background, but I also love like dance music and stuff. So with Silver Summer, it's sort of taking like a lot of like 80s kind of new wave vibes, blending it with just like, I don't know. I'm excited for the record to come out. It's been in the works for over a year, and I'm really excited to put this thing out this year.
Awesome. So another project you were talking about recently was the Holiday Classic thing. What was that all about?
So the Holiday Classic was a big Christmas show that we put together. We were going to do it in 2020, but that fell through, and we pulled it off this year. And this kind of, when I think back on 2022 as a year, start to finish, it was like, I think it's been my favorite year that I've lived through. I mean, every year should be your favorite year, because if you make it to the end, it's a good year, right? But I personally feel like I accomplished just about everything I set out to do last year.
That's good.
Yeah, right. It's huge. And so the Holiday Classic was a 2-night Christmas rock and roll show. Where I wrote a bunch. I wrote 5 original tunes, and then we did a bunch of covers of just like your classic kind of that Phil Spector Christmas record. We did a lot of versions from that. Bruce Springsteen, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. I don't know what it is with me and Christmas, but it seems like I did 2 Christmas compilations, and then this year we did the big Christmas show. And then everybody was like, "You're going to do it again next year, right? And next year and next year." So now it's like
I think Christmas and the holiday stuff, it's easy to get a lot of people on the same page. I think that's partly what it is too.
Yeah.
You sort of have like my daughter was in a children's theater, cabaret musical kind of thing called the holiday concert or winter concert, and it was always it's the same thing. It's something about the holidays. It's everybody's thinking about it. Everybody wants to do some music. Everybody wants to get together.
Yeah. It was super fun. I mean, you kind of, I guess, quote, had to be there for it, but I don't like talking about Christmas after Christmas. It kind of makes me feel.
So this was another one where you recorded the live show, and then
we did. Yeah, we actually.
Afterwards.
Yeah, we did. I opened up the mix session like 2 weeks after the show, and I was just like, I can't do this right now. It's like it's
right.
over.
Yeah.
I just need to let this go. But my plan, one of my plans for this year is to record the originals that I've written, and then have those ready to go to for the show what we do at the end of this year. So yeah.
So what are some things that you've learned about organizing events, live shows, live recordings? What are some tips you got for the rock stars about that? About I don't even know which part to ask because you're the one who went through it. So
yeah,
where are the big challenges, and how do you go about solving them?
Challenges are certainly, I think it starts with making sure that the talent is compensated for their time, and so that's where I've gotten some grants. Like not like arts grants, but like kind of donor grants for some shows. We did a show on a rooftop in May after watching the Beatles Get Back. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my God, we got to do a show on a rooftop. So I organized that. I called it the Spring Formal, and everybody had to dress up. Did
you? Good thing nobody misinterpreted that and leapt off the roof.
Yeah, nobody. There was no man. I looked down and I was like, I'm playing guitar.
I thought you said spring forward.
No. Spring stay on the roof. It was a full moon. It was incredible. It was just such a magical night. And that was a lot of PR. A lot of like making promotional videos, using Facebook, using Instagram, using those social media outlets to just basically push that event in people's faces for the duration of the lead up to it. For the Holiday Classic, and
what is the lead up to that? What is the lead up to an event? What's the appropriate amount of time?
You got 6 weeks, 8 weeks. If you can do 2 months, if it's a big event that you're selling tickets for, because the Holiday Classic and the Spring Formal were both ticketed events, and we had a capacity that we were hoping to hit. And we hit it, for those events. But yeah, you maybe want to plan at least. I guess that was my whole thing last year. Was I was tired of just doing show every weekend. I was sick of that. Like, let's haul out here and throw up at the PA and play here for 2 hours and go there next week. And I flipped it and I focused on one big event a month, and it went well. And now this year we're playing one show in February, and then we're taking the rest of the beginning of this year off to finish the record. So it's the complete opposite of what I did last year. But yeah, you use as much of your social media marketing savvy as you have. I make a lot of promo videos for these shows, these like big events that I do. And just, I don't know, shove it in people's faces. I got on the news for the Holiday Classic. I did some stand-up comedy. I have this character that I portray. His name is Clifford Chestnut. And he's kind of like, hey, it's me, Clifford Chestnut, He's sort of this like lounge singer kind of guy. And Clifford was on the prowl all of November and December promoting the show. And it captured people's attention, and I don't know, it was fun.
Nice, that's good.
Yeah,
it's smart to think of thematic stuff, and
yeah.
It's good to know that you did better than, calling it the jam session, aka the second half of the show.
I love the jam session. I learned so much in the jam session.
It really has turned into a thing. It seems like the flow of this show is, the kind of the philosophy and the about, the stories, the personal stories in the first half, and in the second half, we do get a little more granular, which is fun.
Let's get granular. Let's get weird.
All right. So here's a granular question for you. One of the, on YouTube, you have a bunch of videos and you're singing and playing guitar. You might be performing on other people's shows, but it's just got a great sound and attitude. But I think I remember you had some cool kind of vocal effects going on and stuff like that gave your voice this really big doubled harmonied sound.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. What was that all about?
Sure. So that's the TC Helicon Voice Live Play. It's a little blue box. You can make patches. There are 7 effects that you can manipulate per patch. Basic things, reverb, delay, and then he gets weirder, hard tune, pitch, vocal doubling, and like a harmonizer kind of thing. And I don't know, we just got them. We started using them, Laura and I, and just kind of took to it. And it works with the sound that I'm trying to do and that Laura's doing with her band Given Names. We have a lot of like synthesizer, a lot of kind of process sounds, and there's something about a bone dry vocal in the mix of like all of that washy kind of ambient synth drum machine stuff that just sounds weird to my ear. Maybe it sounds cool to somebody else, but
so you're saying it's nice to put some effects on the voice too?
Yeah. I mean, if you think of your voice, it's an instrument, and my guitar is covered in effects pedals, chorus, delay, reverb, all kinds of stuff. Like, why the hell not
save the dry vocal for the Buddy Holly dry.
That's right.
Plinky Strat guitar, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and so, but when I'm recording the record, I was doing a vocal session for Silver Summer over the weekend. I'm going in dry, and I'm probably going to mix it pretty dry. Reverb, delay, obviously, but I don't want to get too. And I guess that's a decision that I'll make when it comes to the mix. But live stuff, yeah, it's just fun.
So the TC Helicon Voice Live Play, that's a box. Now, am I correct? Is it one of those ones that was following your voice with harmony notes, but in the correct key or something like that?
Yeah. You can set it to the key. You can set it to be auto, and it just sort of follows whatever pitch you're singing.
But how does it know, whether it's a minor or major chord or anything like that, or does that not matter?
You can also set that too. Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, like, you have to tell it, you're like, this song I'm about to play is in C sharp minor or whatever.
Yeah, actually, you go up to the box, you whisper into its ear. No, there's a setting inside of that particular patch where you can make it songs in C sharp minor.
It's the patch for that song. You
exactly.
Just switch from song to song.
Yep.
And then does it or other ones that you've found also have a second input where the guitar goes into that and it listens to the guitar chords and like just determines the chord harmonies for your voice to go with the guitar chord or something like that?
Yeah, that box exists. It's also a TC Helicon unit. I'm not sure what that one is, but I don't use. I just stick with the blue guy. I've seen
some other artists. There was another artist here, Joe Pisapi, who was doing some live stream stuff like that. I was like, how the hell did you do that to your voice? It sounds so cool.
Yeah,
well, it's a good reminder. I mean, it's just, I think it's a smart reminder to remember that voices deserve effects too,
Yeah.
And if you can come up with something cool like that, it can make the live performance for a live stream or just for like an acoustic voice thing on stage more compelling sometimes.
Yeah. And there's time and place for it. Like I don't always go all crazy with the vocal stuff. But then I will sing with Silver Summer just dry, and I'm like, I don't know if this works. It doesn't work for my ear. I don't think of it. I hope it doesn't come across as like a crutch or something, but I don't know. It's just where I'm at right now.
It's just a cool effect.
Yeah, it's cool.
If it was a crutch, I wouldn't have brought it up. All right, so let me see here.
Yeah.
There's let's jump to this. So, how are you enjoying mixing and mastering now? Do you have a way that you've been approaching your mixes? And are you mastering things yourself, or do you send them somewhere else to get them mastered?
I actually send them to a guest, to one of your former guests. So I'll jump to mixing in a sec, but just a shout out to Justin Perkins at Mystery Room Mastering. Yeah. I was really surprised to see him pop up on the show when his show came up like last summer. It was cool.
Yeah, he's coming back again.
Nice. Yeah, he's the man. He's such a cool guy. He's from the Fox Valley of Wisconsin area, which is where my wife went to college. So she knew him. She knew that whole scene, and I just sent him my stuff, and he's super quick, super great, really, really good master.
So then
guy.
Have you had some experience using Samply with Justin? Because I think he uses that to deliver mastered files.
He does, yes. And I just open him up in Dropbox and pull him in. Yeah, he's talked about it, but I just go, there it is. But as far as mixing goes, I like to bus my drums and make little buses. Everybody kind of gets their own little bus, and I kind of mix, bus down until there's just like the 3 outputs, your drum master, your music master, and your vocal master. And I've been experimenting with like effects masters as well that then pipe into their sort of proper wherever they want to go. I love this show because whenever the guests start talking about like their mix templates and their mix sort of setup, I just like hyper focus and listen. And from there, my session organization has gotten to be a lot cleaner. Yeah. And just a lot more easy to like, navigate.
Time to give back, man. Everybody's focusing right now. So break it down for us.
All right. So
break down your buses and your template.
Sure. So when it comes to drums, I like to do a kick in, kick out. For the kick in, I use a Shure 91A boundary condenser mic. It gets a lot of nice like sort of attack and also like a subby bottom, which is super cool. And I just got the AKG D12VR. Not virtual reality, it's vintage reissue. It's a super cool mic, man. I threw that on the kick. We got it, and it was like, oh my god, that's a kick drum. That's it. It's a passive.
Cool.
Yeah, it was like it's way cool. I had been using a D112, which was fine, but it's I don't know compared to the other guy, it's great. Snare, I do snare top bottom. I've got a Bayer Dynamic. Oh shit, M201. TG or something like that. I always forget the model number of it. Steve Albini calls it the mic that the Shure SM57 wishes it was.
Is it a ribbon mic?
No, it's just a dynamic. But so I put that on top, and then the 57 on the bottom. Sennheiser 421s on the toms. A pair of ribbons from Bayer Dynamic as the overheads, and I picked up some Shure condensers. The KM, what are they? The KSM 134s, I think. I got those in the room, and it's I was reading something about like room mics in a small room, and sort of saying like, you don't need them. It's they don't do what you want them to do. But I don't know. I just compress the hell out of the room mics with the UAD distressor plugin. Feed them in. They're just super blown up. It gives you that sort of grit, the girth, the weight, and a lot of like snare energy really pops out of that bus.
Have you tried putting a room mic, one in each top corner of the room, across from the drums?
I want to try to get him as far back as I can, and there's a lot of stuff in the way right now. But I am looking at my top corners, thinking I think that would be a good spot.
Yeah,
for
you
them
could probably
there.
just tape some PZMs up there.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. That's a good idea.
So here's some small room tips that are coming to mind. Taping PZMs to the walls up in those corners could be cool because the corner is going to get you all that, like all the room modes come together right in the corners in the same way that a bass trap is effective there.
Okay.
That could sound cool. And then doing, let me see what else. Doing the pair of mics in front of the drum kit. This is something I learned from Brian Carter. He used to do this, was he'd put 2 figure 8s in front of the drum kit.
Cool.
Sort of like waist height or something like that.
Yeah.
As if you were standing in front of the drums looking at them, except that the mics don't point towards the drums. They point up to the ceiling and down to the floor, and the rejection is pointed towards the drums.
Oh, neat. So you're kind of getting like the like sort of air.
Yeah, you kind of get the splash off the ceiling and floor into the mic.
That's cool. I like that.
And he always loved doing his drum mic in that way, and that was pretty cool.
Cool.
And then I don't remember what the other one was, but that's 2 good ones.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's cool. And like, and then so I'll when I go to the mix, so it's typically I've got 2 mics on each like snare shell, or on each shell, or each the overhead pair, the room pair. I individually like bus the kick. The kicks get their own bus, snare gets their own bus, toms get their own bus, blah blah blah, and then those buses get routed to the drum bus, which I then sort of do some more compression, do some like global EQ. I used to send off of the drum bus to a drum reverb, but then you'd get kick blowing up in there, and so now I'll just send to the reverb from the drums that I want to go to the reverb.
Right. Yeah.
Like rooms will go, overheads will go, snare. Sometimes I play with a gated snare a lot because I think it's kind of a
Yeah, there was one I wanted to ask you about. So, Goodnight Gold Dust, GNGD. I don't know if that was the song. I think that was the album, so I might have the song title. But there's one of the tracks that has this great killer room splash on the snares and maybe a little bit on the kick. Well, it sounds like you're getting into talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, we tracked those records with this really, really great guy in Minneapolis. And I just, this was like a while before I knew what I was doing. And a lot of the stuff that I try to do is what I kind of picked up from watching, his name is Brett Boolean, is what I picked up watching him do. And yeah, that guy he could make drums sound way cool. And he had his room was like, sounded great, but it wasn't like a huge room. It was, just a kind of a smaller studio too. Yeah, and then.
So are you taking a room sound and sort of gating it on the snare or something like that?
Yeah, and it's it's like it's genre specific, I guess. There's something I kind of like about that explosion, the kind of like big
for the right kind of song.
The right song, yeah. So I'll play with that, but it doesn't happen in every song. And then I like to send the kick and the snare buses to like a kick snare compression bus, so you kind of can blend that in. Yep. It's so much like
what compressor do you enjoy using for that? Do you use the Logic compressors a lot?
So I'm running UAD. I'm in the Apollo world,
cool.
And really, really loving everything that they've got. Obviously, because it's super great. I was going to to like the 1176 a lot, and then I got the Distressor, and I was like, shit, this is really cool. It's so versatile. It's so, I kind of like I like the look of it. I don't know. There's something about the Distressor.
It's a killer compressor.
Yeah.
And that's the UAD compressor.
It is.
Distressor you're talking about.
Yeah.
I have the Arouser, which is this,
sure.
The native version of that.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, so I'm using that on a lot of stuff. And I just kind of figured out, I just was reading a bit about it the other day, and I discovered about opto mode. So it's a 10-to-1 ratio, super, and you crank the attack.
Yeah, slowest attack, fastest release.
Exactly. And you put it on kick and snare bus. It just sort of lives there and hangs out. Incidentally, I was listening to Richard Dodd's podcast with you from a couple of years ago, and he was talking about his 1176 trick was 20-to-1 ratio, slowest attack, fastest release, and then just like play with the input and output. And I was doing that.
Was it the slowest attack or the fastest attack, slowest release? I can't remember which one.
I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember either now. But
whatever it was, I remember it being struck by. I was like, wow, that's a bold setting.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, I was listening to it the other day because I really liked his episode. Something about his like energy was like really, really cool. And
I was just texting him the other day.
No kidding.
Yeah, because my computer power adapter died on Sunday, and I was looking for a place that would be open, and I remembered there was this one place that he gave a shout out to on the podcast, and it was this ZMac store. So I went over there and met Zuhair at ZMac store, and he hooked me up.
That's sweet.
All right, back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's cool.
If you are mixing music, podcasts, or audio for video, and you want it to sound amazing, then iZotope has got your back. With RX, Ozone, Neoverb, Nectar, and Vocal Synth, you'll have a collection of powerful apps and plugins that will help you get a professional sound in no time. Whether you're looking to clean up your vocal recordings with RX, master your tracks with Ozone, or add depth and ambience to your mixes with Neoverb, iZotope is your magic wand for awesomeness. Plus, with Nectar and Vocal Synth, you can easily add creative effects and unique textures to your vocals and instruments. From subtle mix enhancements to extreme sound design, iZotope takes your music and podcast productions to the next level. Go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off.
I should say again that I'm once again honored to be here. This was sort of a wild thing to get invited on initially, and I just am like, it's cool to be back. So anyway,
glad to have you, man.
Yeah, back to me. So then as far as the drums go, I liked what the 1176 was doing, and then the Distressor, I don't know, there's just something kind of different about it, more versatile about it. And then from there, I guess I would go to bass guitar from there, and just sort of start. So yeah, with the way that I like build a mix template, or the way that I build a mix is I kind of start, you get the drums together, get the kicks and snares working and all that. I do some gating on the kick and snare to kind of get them isolated a bit more, so there's not all this like hi-hat garbage getting in the way. And then just try to make it work as best I can.
Now, when you're gating kicks and snares, do you find, so a gate will give you a lot of different things. And one of them is like the suppression level, like how much to shut down when it shuts down. You can have it gate 100%, so it's total silence, or you can actually just, push the sound back down 10 dB or 20 dB. Have you messed with that? And do you find that there's a range that you tend to go to at all?
Yeah, I try to get, when it comes to kick and snare, I try to get them gated to the point where it's just the hit, it's just the transient, and then whatever amount of like body, because if you do too much, it just sounds like a splat, right? It just sort of sounds kind of gross and weird. But if you can find that sweet spot and you get the nice attack and the big sound of the drum, and then it goes, and then it clamps and it's gone, so you have like perfect isolation. That's
good, or that's bad?
That works for me and like where I'm at, and I think where my room is at. The cleaner sounds, the cleaner that I can get, the better the mix is.
Well, let's break it down specifically. So on a snare, you talked about the hi-hat, because a lot of times the hi-hat comes screaming in through the snare mic,
just
right?
Ripping your head off.
That's the challenge. And because we're probably compressing the crap out of the snare. And so that's it's almost like an S on a vocal mic. If you compress a vocal like crazy, the S comes way up. If you compress a snare like crazy and brighten it, the hi-hat comes screaming out.
Yeah.
So you find in those situations, that's what we're talking about, rock stars, is if you gate the snare, you can gate it to try and make it go completely away in between snare notes so no hi-hat sneaks through.
Right.
Or you can sometimes decide to just bring the in-between stuff down a certain amount.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I find myself listening to the full drum mix and then just bringing it down enough to where the drum sounds good, but realizing I'd maybe do or don't have to go further than that.
Exactly.
It's all specific to every song and every mix anyway,
Yeah, it is. And, I'll gate the snares, I'll gate the kick, and then I'll sort of find that sweet spot with them sort of in isolation, which I know you shouldn't do too much of, but then you bring it back into the full mix. And if it sounds weird, if it sounds a little too like boop, chap, boop, then I kind of play with the gate and let him breathe a little more. Yeah, but you're right though, man. It's like every song, what does this song want?
And which gate do you use? Is it just a Logic gate, for example?
SSL, the SSL channel strip from UAD. That was like the Waves SSL was what I kind of started on. In terms of like using like a hardware emulation EQ. I like kind of learned how all that stuff works on that particular plugin, and then I got the UAD stuff, been in UAD world, and I finally springed for the UAD SSL emulation. So I like that gate and I like those EQs. I have to tell you, I was mixing so much this past summer that I was having dreams about like the hardware units. I've never used this hardware in my life. And I can't wait to the day when I can actually like put hands on an LA2A or something, But all summer I was having these insane dreams where I was like using the actual compressors to mix with, and
that's
I wake
awesome,
up,
man. Mixing solving your mixes while you sleep.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just such a fun thing. What I love about mixing is that it's always something new. It's always a challenge. Your brain is constantly like firing and stimulated and constantly getting input and having to like problem solve and then be inspired and then make stuff sound cool. And if you can
take a break.
Yeah, and then take like maybe a couple days off from that album. And what I love about, what I've learned from your show is like trying to get as close to the sounds in the room as you can. Because for a long time, I would just, fine, screw it. Let's throw up the mics. Let's get drums. Let's go. And then I'd go to mix and it'd be like, this sounds awful. And I'm just like harshly EQing everything so it's not like horrendously shrill or, like muddy. And so I spent a lot of money. I've done enough sessions. Let's phrase it like that. I've done enough sessions to earn studio money to make purchases toward microphones and I
Nice.
guess getting into plugins now and just learning and doing and stuff to, with the effort, all in the effort of getting the sound as best as I can get it in the room so that the mix, when it comes time to mix, it's more fun than it is like sort of a self-hatred kind of moment. You know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah. I mean, mixing is a fascinating experience for me. I love it. It's always an adventure. It's always also can be very, very difficult. The more I try and get the mix right, the harder it gets.
I think, and I was listening to the episode with Will Pugh earlier today, and there was a moment about like sometimes you just have to trust your first instinct. You just have to go, there it is. And yeah. I think he said something about like when he spends more time on a mix, it gets worse. When he spends less time on a mix, it's like, there it is. I'll sit here after tracking with folks and we'll just kind of do like a quick, I call it like, this is the sketch. This is the rough mix. And mostly it's just like bus EQ, bus compression. I'm not fine tuning anything like individually. I'm just like globally compressing and EQing drums and, balancing the faders and on the vocal and stuff like that. And it's like, this sounds fucking good. And then I get it, to the mix room. I'm alone. I start EQing and finding the chasing tones and
soloing things.
Yeah. And it's like, what am I doing? I should just mix with the band in the room. And then here they go.
So for me, I agree. Yeah. I have that experience too. And one of the things that helps me at that point at which the band is in the room, because generally speaking, we're all exhausted too. We're excited and tired. And so by definition, my hearing is toast. Like, yeah, because what I want to do is crank it up all the way. Yeah. But that's not going to help me mix. So what I do is I go the opposite direction. I crank it down all the way and I put it in mono and put it on the little Auratone speaker. Yeah. And then I just very, very quietly, it's hard to do because everybody's talking and partying in the back of the room, but very quietly, I just listen and I set all the levels and balances between all the instruments for like, can I hear that instrument? Can I hear that instrument? Can I hear that instrument? Okay, is that too much too? Okay. And I do this really rough sketch. Can I hear the reverb and the effect? Yeah. That's a funny one too. When you do it really quiet, you're like, oh, all my subtle effects that I thought were awesome just completely disappeared, Yeah. Yeah. But that does remarkable things. And I find that I can get that rough mix that you just described where I'm like, wow, this sounds pretty great just like this, and I didn't do shit.
Yeah, and I watched obviously that Beatles documentary Get Back was so inspiring just to see Abbey Road at that time, or they were at Abbey Road. They started out at some other place at the sound stage and then they went back to Abbey Road. Yeah. God, it was cool to see that. And just thinking like there's no Pro Tools, there's no Logic, it's probably an 8-track desk at that point. I don't even remember, but there's mics in the room, there's a console, there's tape, and it's the sounds and the songs in the room. And so I was really, inspired by that. Like, how do I bring that energy to my studio? I have a couple of, I've had some interns from the university in town, and I like have this idea to just get us all lab coats, like we're at Abbey Road, which could be kind of fun.
Or electrical.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But and then I watched If These Walls Could Sing, which is another doc about, Abbey Road, that Paul McCartney's daughter made. And just again to like immerse in that room at that time. Throughout those years, there's just something that's so cool about getting tones in the room and just the mix coming out sort of naturally happening. It's really inspiring.
Yeah. Well, let's see what else we want to talk about. Another record you did, Jordan Carr, Reinventing the Dumbass. Tell us a little bit about that record. It's got cool vocals and acoustics, and I like it kind of reminded me of Guided by Voices a little bit. Just had that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, Jordan was a good friend. Is a good friend. He and I worked together a while ago, and then we reconnected during the pandemic, and I did a single for him. And yeah, that was a cool record. That one that we put out. It was a summer. It was a sort of like lost summer. We were all sort of in between jobs. It was a really weird time. So he and I just got together every day and recorded. And then he's actually coming up on the 10-year anniversary of that album which he's really excited about. And
what do you remember about recording those acoustics and getting the vocal effects and stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah, that's going back. I remember a lot of that was just in my apartment at the time. It was, hardwood floors, plaster walls, just probably.
What kind of, did you have like your Universal Audio and Logic or something else?
No. This was GarageBand. This was a Behringer. I mean, this is like proto Goldmine. Yeah. I should say that I work so fast, I guess, for people, and then the recordings come out, and then the clients that I work for, the artists that come into the studio. I wish. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I wish I had more stuff out there. It just seems like I kind of am slow to get my work out. But when I was working with Jordan, it was at a time where I didn't care about things the way I do now, right? I was just like, okay, I got a microphone, I got a mixer, let's go, And
that can have a really cool quality to the sound.
Yeah.
Sometimes you listen to that stuff now, and I can listen to stuff that was recorded sort of fast and furious, and then I'm like, how would I even get that sound now if I wanted to? That's a cool sound,
Yeah. When I first started recording, I had a Tascam 4-track, the little blue Porta Studio. And, you do 3 mics on the drums, bounce that down to the 4th track, bass, bounce it, guitar, bounce it, another guitar, vocals. And like some of those recordings, I mean, I was like in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s doing that. That was cool stuff. And I was just experimenting and exploring. And I've kind of found that you kind of grow out of that. You want I'll put this in quotes, like better quality sound. So you invest more, you get better mics, you get better preamps and stuff. And sometimes that like initial inspiration can kind of get a little, at least this has happened to me, where I start to go like, oh, wait a minute, now I have all this gear that I have to figure out how to use, and I'm kind of lost something when it was just like a phone memo. You would just put your phone out and record that.
Do you ever feel like the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take you years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, "Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process that I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, but condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session." Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that this will take your mixes to the next level that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the Ultimate Snare Mixing Trick. And I'll see you at the front row table of the Grammys. Cheers. Yeah, when you have the simple version of the studio, there's not much to do there. So you spend all your energy pours into how should I make the sound come out of this guitar out of my fingers right now?
Yeah.
And that becomes where all the expression is. And that is a cool thing to listen to when you listen back. When we have all this, when a lot of our creative energy and expression goes into the fanciness of how we're multi-tracking things or how we can edit it and manipulate it and mix it, then, the spirit coming out of the guitar part might get, sort of clouded or lost a little bit.
Yeah. I definitely have to check myself as like an engineer, as a as a mixer, on the production side of things. Like remember how fast remember how fun it is to go fast in the studio, right? And if it's like, okay, well, we got to dial this in, we got to fart around with this forever. The artist gets bored. They, like you lose focus. So I have tried to, I have to, keep that in front of me. Like, make sure it's fun, make sure it's fast, make sure you can get to pressing record as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you remember we were talking before about the process of recording a song, like the sketch, the band demo, or the sketch, the demo, the band demo, or the master recording, that kind of thing. One thing about that process for me that I've been enjoying lately, playing with my friends, is doing every aspect of that really fast. So the sketch might be really fast because it's just a voice memo, and it might just be like the nugget of a chorus idea and the nugget of a verse idea, done, move on, Then the hit in the studio with the band is also fast because now I take the sketch and I chart it out for everybody to play. And that way we can get through the recording session pretty fast because everybody's like, okay, there's the song arrangement. Whether some of us can read the chart, some of us can't, but usually everybody can go like, it's pretty clear what we're going to do. Because you're probably familiar with this, but the countless hours and days I've spent with bands, like where everybody's like, no, the third chorus after the do 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 do, and then you add in the do do do, and it's like all this mental energy gets just like lost in a vacuum of just trying to remember what the hell the organization of the song is. But when I record with the band that way, again, that recording, it goes really fast. And to your point, it's like, if that recording doesn't sound like the right one, then fine. We'll like come back and do it again another time. And the next time we'll all know what our parts are because we did it that one time, and we'll do that version fast and maybe it'll beat it,
Yeah. That's something that my friend Scott was telling me. He worked he was a professor at McNally Smith in Minneapolis, which was like a music production, big time like school for musicians in the state. Evan Bakke, I think, was on your podcast. Yeah. Evan was one of Scott's students. Scott got Evan the job at Paisley Park, working for Prince.
Nice.
And I reached out to Evan after that. I don't know him personally, but I texted him or emailed him and I said, yeah, I loved your episode. So Scott is a friend of mine. He did records for Brian Setzer. He's been in the industry for a long time. Cool cat. Really, really nice man. We watched the Grammys actually last night together. So that was fun. But the thing that Scott told me that I take to heart, that I think that speaks to what we were just talking about, is, when you're getting ready, I guess this is advice for, any bands or songwriters out there. If you're going to go to the studio, the thing that Scott told me is get your band as rehearsed as can be. Know the arrangements, know your BPMs if you can figure those out. Know your vocal melodies. What are your guitar parts? What are your drums? How many times are you going to hit the kick and snare, in the chorus and the verse? Like, be as rehearsed as possible so that when you come into the studio, you can actually have fun and create and explore and maybe find something new, because you're not like you said, like, what's the arrangement again? How does this part go? So that's something that
I think it's good that you pointed out that you want to leave room for something new to happen in the studio. Yeah, so that's smart. But by rehearsing, you're working out all these kinks that, if you try and work them out in the studio, then you're missing your opportunity. You want to be able to do everything kind of quickly.
Yeah, there have been times, when I'd be recording with some folks and it's like, okay, like, let's try that again. Let's play a little more in time. Let's do it a little more tighter, so to speak. And it's like, man, I think I was talking about this with a drummer earlier, and then they'll go home, they'll rehearse, they'll come back, it's better. So yeah.
But if they did it all in the studio, then Buddy Holly says, sir, I've tried all your ideas, and I sang in tune, and I tuned my guitar, and I played the line you wanted me to do, and that's the most god-awful piece of shit I ever heard.
That's right. You're just wasting time. You're getting tired. And I mean, I'm looking around my room right now. Obviously, rock stars, you can't see the room, but there are no windows in this room. It's I have some dim ambient lights in here, but you're down here for. I had a session yesterday. I was tracking synth for my wife's Laura's band. Her synth player came down and we were here for 6 hours. And after 6, man, it was like, you want to keep going? We have a couple songs left. And we were both just like, no, I'm fried, know? So yeah. And not that we had been wasting time. We were working hard and doing all kinds of stuff, but yeah,
I think it's your wife in Goodnight Gold Dust, right?
Yeah, that's her. That's Laura.
So one of the songs, it could have been you, or maybe that was the record. Water, that was the song, I think. It's got great, like really luscious vocal stacks and stuff like that. And so I wanted to ask you, we can close out on this, but how do you like to record her vocals? What have you learned about recording stacks of vocals and harmonies and that sort of thing?
Laura is the type of person that I'll come home from work or, from wherever I've been all day. And if she's been home for a bit, she'll say, hey, I wrote a new song, and she'll play me her, cell phone recording or her GarageBand recording just over the laptop speakers. And it's just like, my God, that woman, it doesn't matter what she sings into. It always sounds like complete. It always sounds like a record. It always sounds just, you don't need to do anything else to it.
So she's got a great voice.
Oh God, she's just got a voice. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's insane. So with her, I just put a mic up and we go, okay, babe, just go. And she always has ideas for like layering harmonies and how to build up her voice. She's really like voice as an instrument, is sort of, that's her whole thing.
Well, you guys also did some really cool effects and vocal effects on that stuff too. I think you like really tasty stuff coming in on just certain lines and phrases. And
yeah, we did that record up in Minneapolis, and specifically with that song, Brett, the guy that we worked with for that record, he had just gotten I think it was an Otari tape machine. I can't remember the actual brand. Yeah, but he actually like strung the tape around the room to get those like so that's those delays on the song In Water. Those are actual. That's like tape running throughout the mix room. Yeah, it was like wild watching him work. I learned a lot from that guy, and just sort of by being around him. I'm trying
to remember if I've done a tape loop. I must have done it at least once.
Yeah, I don't have a tape machine. I have a cassette deck right over here that I've done some reamping and sort of like take it to the cassette and then pull it back into Logic to kind of like make it sound weird and cool.
Yeah, I need to do more of that stuff.
Yeah, I know. You get to that point and you're like, all right, well, that's some
now
patching.
I have Sketch Cassette too, which is that
I just got that
plugin.
yesterday. Yeah, I just got that yesterday.
And it's really good. So I may not have to send it to the cassette deck.
Yeah, that's a hell of a plugin, man. It's super cool. We were using it yesterday. It's rad.
All right, so let's go to our closing question. This is we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine again, and you get to go back in time and find young Colin, who's tuning up his Strat for the Buddy Holly show, or whenever you want to go, and just you say, "Listen, dude, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day." What advice would you like to go back and give yourself?
I thought a lot about this today. This was my I had a nightmare that I was late for the podcast. So I just wanted to let you know that. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to screw this up. Oh, so I woke up thinking about this question. And my response, which came to me as I was driving to my studio, my response is, don't overthink it. Because I've spent so much time I said it earlier, just trying to make whatever it is, the song, the lyric, the verse, the recording, the whatever, trying to make it as perfect as possible. And then getting hung up, losing focus, losing direction really, and losing the energy to actually move on from the song or the part or the whatever. So this is kind of like my mantra for this year, I think, is don't overthink it. Just not like a beatnik first thought, best thought thing. I'm not going to go that far because I don't fully subscribe to that idea. But I do think put the mic up. You know what you're doing. Trust yourself. Don't overthink it. Get it out and keep going.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I applaud all the stuff you're doing. It's great. I love to hear about all these, ways that you're bringing lots of music together and creating. And we really appreciate you hanging out with us on the show, man. And thanks for letting me know that Recording Studio Rockstars has helped you along on your journey.
It's instrumental in my journey. And
maybe it's time for us to get an arts grant to keep, to level up.
You let me know, man. I will help you write it. I would love to do that.
That's awesome. Well, let the rock stars know, where can they go find out more about you if they're ready to go check out your music. Maybe they want to come play on a show, or maybe they just want to come make their next great record with you.
I would love any of that. I'm on Instagram. You can find me at goldmine.studios. My band on Instagram is at Silver Summer Lovers. I'm at Colin Scharf on Instagram, and also at Goodnight Gold Dust. Goldmine Studios 507 at gmail.com. If you want to drop me a line about grant writing or anything, would be happy to chat with you.
Sweet, man. Yeah. Well, Rockstars, thanks for listening. And Colin, thanks for hanging with us again, man. I look forward to seeing you around the studio, or coming out to rock a show with you in Mankato or Mankato or wherever, wherever the music's happening.
Wherever it is, man. I would love to. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks again, Lidge. This was a pleasure.
My pleasure, dude. Talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lidge Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: OWC, Lewitt, Atom Audio, Isotope, and Spectra 1964. And remember, at isotope.com/rockstars, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, then please check out our sponsors using the link in our show notes, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko and Braden Stremming, for additional podcasts and video production. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.